Hi there, and welcome on the journey to transform culture. I'm Steve, and I'll be your guide. Well, folks, I hope you're having a fantastic day and an even better week. Today, folks, we're going to jump straight into a topic that I would like to call or title Defining Moments. You know, as we discuss so many different things on this channel, the whole notion, right, is to transform for the better, right? And oftentimes we jump into organizational transformation and then discuss the rest of culture, right? And how many of these topics ripple outward, right? The relevance of them ripple outward into our individual lives, right? Into communities and civic organizations and so on. But because so many of us come together in organizations, it's a great jumping in point, but B, and I guess you could say there's way more than A and B, but B, there's so much brokenness in organizations right now, right? An example is 70% of transformation, ERP transformations, suffer and fail, not because of the software, but because of the organizational culture, right? So when we're talking about so many of these topics, we look at it as our teams, right? Whether we're leading those teams, we're members of those teams, the newest member, the veteran, right? The owners, all of it. For relevance to help ourselves, sometimes just for realization. And I think today, this topic, defining moments, is really about taking time to reflect, right? In a myriad of ways. Much the same way that a gem has many facets, right? Many faces that reflect, that give it its beauty and its shine and luster and all those things. Its glimmer. So too, our experiences in life, the same way. We are many faceted individuals, right? And then when you add our individual facets to a team or to any facet of culture, really, then it just combines that, and you can imagine how that must radiate in so many good ways. And oftentimes we can be a little bit either or, right? We can say, oh, well, this was good and this is bad. And we can be very harsh on ourselves, overly judgmental about ourselves. And, we can feel guilty for things we didn't do and all of the things, right? But what we have to realize is it's all growth, right? As long as we're trying and we're moving forward, it's all growth, and that's okay. And I think that gives us a bit of an out. It should give all of you hope and an out. But today, in the reflection, I guess you could say, of defining moments, I want to share a few of my defining moments. Not that they're significantly any, we all have them. But I would like to invite you, as I'm talking about mine, or just, lightly, that you reflect upon your defining moments. For some, it might be graduating, with a particular degree, or traveling and having a particular adventure, right? Going to a foreign land and doing something really amazing. It might be skydiving for some. It might be snorkeling for another. It might be, all the things and all the adventures that we can possibly imagine. It can be the birth of our children, right? It can be heartfelt, and there can be tragedy as well. Not all defining moments are those turn a corner, super awesome moments, right? Some of them are introspective, heartfelt, sometimes painful, sometimes in the moment traumatic. But then as time moves on, you can look back fondly on something, right? That was potentially painful, right? Or if not fondly, appreciative, having because it taught you to see life and to revere life in a different way, maybe a deeper way, maybe a more serious way if you hadn't before, right? And then this elicits growth, and we all go through this. Well, I'll talk about one defining moment for me. My cousin was with my second cousin. So my cousin, she had a son who was, I guess, not quite walking, which is key to this story. And we were at my uncle's little riverside property thing, and there was like a couple docks, kind of in an L shape, and it was kind of shallow on one, nearer the shore, and then it got deeper as you went out. And I was 17, I believe I was 17, and we went out to with some other family members, and we were swimming, off the dock and sitting on the dock and visiting, and just family. And it wasn't a big dock, a very wide dock, but it was, it was a dock. But when the boats would come by, the waves would down the river. The waves would push the dock, and the one dock would slam into the other dock that was, and there was like a concrete fortification along the edge there in the embankment, and which was kind of annoying, but whatever. So I jumped in, and I'm 17, and I'm swimming like a fish, and I was all over the place and doing my thing, totally oblivious to everyone else, as you might expect a 17-year-old male to be, slamming myself as a 17-year-old. But I remember I'd swim underneath the water, underneath the dock that was further out because it was deeper, and I would go back and forth and just messing around. Well, I swam under the dock and jumped right out of the water. Back then, I was pretty strong, and just kind of jumped right out of the water, and water was running off me, and I grabbed my towel, and the water was in my ears and the whole thing, so I couldn't hear clearly, and I was putting my towel over my head because I was, drying myself off or whatever in my head, just jumped out of the water, hadn't even looked around, and so I didn't hear anything because, of course, I had the towel over my ears and so on. And I heard my cousin say to my second cousin, the toddler, or almost toddler, say his name, and I heard thump, 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 just as I had lowered the towel, and it was as if time slowed down. And he went by me. What had happened was he tried to stand up and take some steps, but the weight of his body started to gain momentum, and he was going down the dock out of control. And he happened to be going right by me just as I lowered the towel. And just as I lowered the towel, he was going over like Superman style, and he was going to go in between those two docks, and it just so happened the boat had gone by and was slamming we were slamming into this other dock, and he was going right into the gap. Now, into the gap would have meant he would have been under the other dock, and it would have been too shallow for me to get underneath. So it was too shallow, right? Type of a situation on that side. But just as he went by, I brought that towel down. He was flying through the air, and everything slowed way down. It was just crazy. I can't even believe it even happened. To this day, I can't believe it occurred the way it did. I reached down, and the way your foot would be, I can't really make a foot out of my hand, but I grabbed onto his heel, and right behind his heel where, had just in the air. And his momentum, he took him into the water, and then I pulled him right back out just as those docks came slamming and of course I set him down. Just as those docks came slamming together, I was not driving the bus situation. If anybody ever asked me, do you believe in the divine? Pretty clearly, right? Pretty clearly. I was not driving the bus. I was merely an observer or whatever, along for the ride. I lowered my towel. This was happening. It slowed way down. I grabbed him, pulled him right back out. But one of the things that I was very aware of, because this was so almost like an out of body experience, so strange, but yet it made me reflect on, wow, how important, right? As a 17-year-old, I had serious moments as a 17-year-old. I can have serious moments, obviously, throughout my entire life. I can also be kind of a fun, goofy guy too. But what I realized was, is that living this life puts you in positions that you're not always prepared, that you'll never be prepared for, but that you'll be put in the gap, literally like that, in certain aspects, right? It may not be that dramatic, right? Some of them may be more dramatic, right? You hear about people who had car accidents back in the day, and, say an older people who don't have the strength would lift cars up to get people out. I mean, just feats of strength that people were just in the moment. Again, they were they were not driving the bus, right? And but the point is that sometimes we're put in those situations. We're put in those near the gaps, right? And those become defining moments for us and others. Now, that second cousin, now he's in his early 40s, and he was a renowned photographer on both the East and the West Coast. I mean, more than just East and West Coast, but coast to coast. He's a renowned photographer. He does commercial work and all kinds of other things. So you just see how the ripple effect, the domino effect, right? And these are transformative moments in a person's life that makes you reflect and say, oh my gosh. And then for myself, that propelled me to go on and to do, and to serve and to do other things too. But these are significantly defining moments, right? That's a good one, right? It had a good outcome. But it could have been just as equally, it could have been tragic, and what could have also been a defining moment. And what happens is I think all too often we over focus, right? Because we do feel like we are quick to judge ourselves and quick to say, oh, you failed there. Sure, we're going to fail. We failed. Look, folks, all of us, at our best, we succeeded maybe 15% of the time. We are constantly failing, right? Failing to listen, failing to hear, failing to stop and take time, failing to go visit somebody you should visit, failing to call somebody back. I mean, fail. We fail all the time, right? But what do we do with those failures? Are we improving? Part of transformation within our own lives, and obviously on our teams and in culture in general, transformation is about identifying when we've, literally, failed, right? We can say failed, but when we didn't succeed, right? And, half glass is half full, glass is half empty, either way. But where we failed, what did we do, right? If I treated somebody poorly, right? And did I come back and correct that? Did I apologize? Did I rectify the situation? Because I think another thing that happens is when we don't do that, we end up carrying this sleigh of, it's kind of the anti-Christmas sleigh with all the things we screwed up, right? And if we don't stop and, call that long lost friend and say, hey, I should have kept up and all the things, right? When we don't do those things, then they just weigh on us. And we don't even often, I believe, we don't often even realize that they're weighing on us until we do something about it, or until we, cross the bridge, or maybe it's a lesson learned in certain people's lives and relationships we've had, right? Lessons learned that we go forward to do better in future relationships, right? Professional or personal or any, right? So So important that you're defining moments, right? We can have fun talking about the cool stuff, and I have lots of cool stuff that I remember, and I just cherish them. And then there are things that I go, oh my gosh, I failed. Oh my gosh, I failed. Oh geez, if I could take that back. Oh, if I hadn't done that. We all do that, folks. We're going to do that in a moment situation, but it's important not to get stuck on that island, right? To go, oh, yep, I did that. But you know what? I learned from it. And that's not who I am now. And the same for you. The person that you were 5, 10, 15, 2 minutes ago, whatever, is not the person you are now if you make different choices going forward, right? The choices you make going forward are the things that are defining who you are in the future moment, in the future now, right? So figure that one out, future now. So super important that we understand that defining moments aren't always, happy, cool, positive, and amazing. Sometimes it can be tough, tragic, deep, heartfelt, discouraging. They could take, weeks, months, years to overcome and to heal from. But it's important that we understand that those are defining moments. From those defining moments, great breakthroughs can be had, right? If you don't get stuck there, and if you open yourself up, right, and listen for that wind of inspiration to blow through and to give you your, I guess you could say, to give you your inspiration. I remember, it's in the book, obviously I bring it up often on the videos about we're here to protect love, but I didn't just pull that out of thin air. I remember I was in the shower in 2022, I guess. Yeah, right about 2022, beginning somewhere in there, 2020, end of 2021, 22. And I was in the shower. I wasn't home. I was traveling, and and I just remember saying a prayer. Okay, what am I really supposed to be cluing in? Why are we here? What, the big ticket question, right? I was asking the big ticket question, folks. I wasn't asking hey, could you help me solve today's puzzle, right? It was a big, profound question. And as the water ran over me, and so on, and it wasn't like I was looking for an answer in that second, But then a couple days later, I was in the shower again, and this almost like a wind blew through. It was almost like let's say it was a voice, but it was almost like a feeling. But this phrase came to me: "You are here to protect love. We are here to protect love." And then when I heard that, I was like, oh, "That's the key, folks. That is the key to everything. We are here to protect love." Right? All of these defining moments, positive, heartfelt, tragic, traumatic, glorious, amazing, right? Miraculous, right? All of these defining moments. What is the key element that interweaves all of this, that makes it valuable in our lives, professionally, personally, and other? It is that all of it is for the purpose of protecting love, right? When I grabbed my second cousin's leg, right? It wasn't, obviously it was his life, right? But in that moment, it's protecting love, right? We are wired to protect love, I believe, if we just let go of trying to over control and allow, the river of life to come through us a little more naturally, a little more symbiotically, right? Where we're working with, the universe, if you will. We're working with one another. We're collaborating with each other. We're innovating with one another. We're negotiating for the best outcome for all of us, not just for one or another. We're not trying to get over on one another. We're trying to do the thing that is going to protect love, not only in others' lives, but in our lives as well, which is also a difficulty because some folks are overgivers. They don't know how to receive, and they've never they've never received, and they're always given, so they don't know how to do it. So consequently become targets for those who are takers by nature. Definitely a toxic and a difficult thing. But when you realize that this is going on and you step aside from that, remove yourself from these toxic environments, that is a defining moment, right? A defining moment can also be about protecting love within your own life, right? Within your own space, right? Within protecting your family's life, right? So maybe you have to move, or maybe you have to, not work where you're working because it's a toxic environment. All kinds of situations, right? That you have to make a judgment call, right? To do what you must to protect love in your life. But that also means that we have to understand that it's not just about us, right? We have to see the value in protecting love in others' lives. And oftentimes when relationships fail, professionally, personally, whatever, when they fail, failing, forward, I guess you could say, to see the positive light in situations like that, is that sometimes you're protecting love in each other's lives, right, personally, professionally, or otherwise, to move on, right? To move on allows others to grow because we may be inhibiting each other, right? It may be that professionally, you've grown as much as you can within the organization you're in, and to try to keep, say progressing where you are, it's not really allowing you to grow, and it isn't allowing the organization to grow. There comes a time when there must be an end to that particular story, right? And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. It just means, hey, you think of a ship's captain. At some point, right, a member of the crew develops to the point where they're ready to take on their own ship, right, to take on their own leadership. And that's true for all of us in all of our lives. It doesn't matter if we're actually talking about work or professional, leadership, or professional leadership at any level, or just being a member of a team, or if it's in our own personal lives. At some point, you are going to outgrow the boat that you are on if you are growing. You will never outgrow the boat that you're on if you stifle your growth. You see how that works? The only way for you to grow on the boat that you're on is if you are on a boat with people who are also wanting to grow. So do you understand now why an organization that is doesn't have a growth mindset, doesn't have a transformative continuous improvement mindset, now is inhibiting a portion of their team? And this is why they lose team members. And this fragments the culture, right? Super important. And you can take that same situation and you can overlay that within the rest, civic organizations, churches, politics, you name it, outside of work as well, all of culture. And you can see it. You can see it in different states and cities. We're so used to being divided. We're so used to borders that we don't even consider what it would ever mean for us to get along and just to cooperate, really, right? So super important, folks, that we understand defining moments can be really cool, wondrous, amazing things, but they can also be lessons learned from failure too, right? And we shouldn't overly judge ourselves too harshly. We've all failed. We all have failures going forward. You are not immune to failure going forward, just like you're not immune to success, right? You have just as much opportunity to succeed in wonderful, amazing ways as you do to fail. So there's always hope, right? There's always the possible. And on that note, folks, we'll just wrap it up. Remember to hit that good green domino 3 to 5 times a day or more to uplift, motivate, inspire, and just encourage other folks. When you do that, not only help to transform culture, but we're transforming our own lives. Remember, we can't transform anything on the outside if we're not willing to transform ourselves on the inside. All right, folks, have a great day. Hit like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, we'll talk to you later.